Hello, welcome to Senior Connections. This is our monthly look at all things older adult related in the Muskegon area. Brought to you by Senior Resources, which is your local area agency on aging, serving Muskegon, Oceana, and Ottawa counties. We come together every month to talk about issues and subjects that are of interest to our older adults and their family and those who love them. And those subjects can range from Medicare to in-home needs, to transportation, to caregiving, which is what we'll talk about today. So I'm excited to have as my guests two of my favorite people at Senior Resources, my coworkers Amy Florea and Kim Vazquez. Welcome, ladies. You've been on before, and earlier this year I think we were. Thanks for coming again. So we're in December, in the thick of the holiday season, depending on no matter what religion or interest, there's a holiday going on, it seems like December. And that's often a really joyous time for many of us. We tend to think of it as a really happy time, but it isn't necessarily for everybody, right? So it can be a lot of stress for people who are caregivers and for older adults themselves when the routines are turned upside down or people aren't around them that they would like to see. So Kim and Amy are going to share with us some ideas for both caregivers and older adults themselves that can help us get through what can be stressful. And I think it's just good to put it out there that it can be stressful. But before we get into that, let's just start like I always like to. Tell our viewers who may just be tuning in a little bit about yourself and your role at Senior Resources. Amy?
Well, like you said, I'm Amy Florea, and I'm the Community Services Director at Senior Resources, and I've been with Senior Resources for 21 years. So I've worked a lot of different positions and really have enjoyed working with seniors and for seniors throughout that career time. At Senior Resources, I work mostly with access services. So we help older adults in our communities access the services which they need and the supports they need to stay in their own homes. And as part of that, we work with caregivers. And I facilitate both the Powerful Tools for Caregivers and the Savvy Caregiver Workshop. And sometimes fill in for the caregiver support groups, which we hold on Friday afternoons.
Great. Wonderful. Kim?
Well, I'm Kim Vazquez, and I work with Amy, and my title is the Access Services Manager. So I oversee case management programs that we have. We roughly have around 900 people at any given time in our case management programs. So I do that, and then I also have the privilege of doing the evidence-based programs with Amy. Again, the Savvy Caregiver program and the Powerful Tools program. I'm trained in both of those, and those are really just fun and excellent classes that we get to hold and really get to know our caregivers at a personal level. So it's really a neat experience for us to be able to do that.
Wonderful. I'm sure we'll talk about some of those a little bit more. But it is holiday time, and one of the things we know is that a lot of times, it's 2018 and we're more far-flung family-wise than generations before. So a lot of times we've got family members coming from out of town and gathering together with parents or aunt and uncle or grandpa and grandma or whatever, and they might notice a change of some kind in those people. So I know that we've talked about options counseling earlier this year. That's really our flagship program. Kim, let us know a little bit, again, a refresher on what a concerned family member might expect if they call our options counselors and how they would get a hold of them.
Sure. Well, they can call our main number, which is 231-739-5858, or they can call our direct line into options counseling at 231-733-3585. Sorry, I should have known that. But they can call us anytime from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have people answering. We actually have 4 options counselors answering the phone lines, and they really listen to the individual story of what's going on. Oftentimes people find themselves in a critical point where they're not sure what to do as far as getting the long-term supports and services that they might need, and they're just not aware of what the options are, from possibly assisted living to in-home options. There's just really a gap of knowledge in that area. And so the options counselors help them to navigate through all these different resources, all the different options of care that there are, and look at the different programs that are all over through our community, through Department of Health and Human Services, through our own programs, through programs like the Life Circles PACE, and really help them to formulate a plan that's going to help keep them in the community setting of their choice.
So a lot of times they're calling not even really knowing what they're calling for, right?
Right.
They have heard about these options, fabulous options counselors, but they're calling just really not even knowing what they're asking for sometimes.
Somewhere, someone along the way said, hey, call Senior Resources and see what, programs there are available.
And that's perfectly fine for them to do.
Absolutely.
Because so if they call and they don't know, somebody told me to call and I don't know why, what might an options counselor ask them to get to what the issue is?
Sure. Well, they would probably start asking what the scenario is if they have someone that they're caregiving for, or if they themselves are experiencing a chronic condition that is creating a need for additional help and services. So if there's a long-term care need, and then really delving in with that individual as far as what's going on. And how is that affecting their ability to care for themselves? So they look at, are they able to bathe themselves, dress themselves? Maybe it's cooking or cleaning that's the difficulty, or laundry. So really trying to find out exactly what the barriers are to caring for themselves, and then find the correct supports to link them with.
So it's important for everybody to know that they don't have to know exactly why. Every story is different. Every single person who calls has a different need, and we're equipped to handle.
Absolutely. They're very skilled at talking to the individual and finding out more information to get to the bottom of what it is that their need is.
Yeah. I just think every show we do, almost, if we're talking about senior resources, we need to be talking about these fabulous options counselors, because they're so critical to connecting everybody. So Amy, let's talk about family norms and how those can change during the holidays.
Yes, most families have established norms or traditions that they've created and possibly have engaged in for years or even decades. Mom's always done the Christmas dinner, and she's always made the ham and 5 sides and all of the pies. Or Aunt Sally's always had a Christmas Eve party, and maybe Uncle Bill's decorated the whole house. So when caregiving is introduced to a holiday scenario, and then family members have kind of expectations for those caregivers, we know that it can be difficult. Caregiving does not take a vacation, and it does not take a holiday. So when you're caregiving, you might be acting as a nurse, you might be acting as a pharmacist, you might be acting as a chauffeur and a liaison between the doctor for the person you're caring for. None of that stops over the holiday. So we really need to be, as caregivers, cognizant of the fact that we might not be able to do it all. We might need to look at the repertoire of holiday activities that we've always done and choose some very important ones. Look at the ones that give us the most satisfaction, or that we feel we couldn't do without. And then talk to family about how those expectations might need to change. Who could possibly take over some of the responsibilities of the holiday, and how they can support that caregiver during the holiday season.
And I would imagine sometimes some of those traditions or norms could be challenging for the person receiving the care also, because having 50 people over for the holidays may be overwhelming, especially if we're dealing with dementia, or lots of other physical things as well. So we have to, I would guess, also be looking at the care recipient and how their needs may have changed.
Absolutely.
And have those conversations. And really it all comes down to communication. As a communications director, I think everything comes down to that. But what kind of tips might you have about how people can better communicate about all that? Because when you're talking family dynamics, that can get really dicey.
Yeah,
sometimes.
It does. And it's dicey on both sides. Right. For the caregiver, who certainly doesn't want to let her family down or let his family down when you're thinking of holding those holiday traditions sacred. And for the people who perhaps aren't around as much and don't understand that the dynamic of caregiving has changed that person's ability to really be as involved in the holiday as they had been in the past. So you're right, communication is really vital. For that caregiver, it's recognizing how much can I really do, how much is going to be too much, what's still important to me. You know, is it the cookie decorating with the grandkids? Is that the important thing for me? If it is, then I want to hold that tradition, but I don't necessarily think I can put on the meal the next day. So having a conversation with family members, using I statements. Instead of you never do anything at the holidays, I feel I'm not going to be able to cook an entire meal this holiday season. I am just too overwhelmed with caregiving. How might we still have a meal together? Should we do a potluck? Really looking at what's available in the community for resources. There's churches who might have holiday meals available. That might be an option. If you've always had 30 people over on Christmas Eve and your person that you're caring for has dementia, you might really need to consider having that person with a respite provider for the holiday party, because it can be overwhelming and very overstimulating for someone if they're not able to make sense of that party and what's going on.
So let me just stop on that, because that's something that would probably not enter somebody's mind necessarily as something that would be okay. So how might somebody, maybe as the caregiver, I know that because I'm dealing with that all the time, and I know that that overstimulation is just really going to mess with the care recipient. How might somebody convey the importance of that and why it's so vital to do that? Because it could be really upsetting to the care recipient as well, right?
So convey the importance of respite.
Because somebody might say, but Grandma's always been here, and it won't be the same if Grandma's not here, but Grandma might not be the same anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So
perhaps, using some language such as, I've observed when Grandma's in settings that are overstimulating, she becomes agitated, or she becomes sad or withdrawn, and we want the holiday season to be fun for everyone. So, we would like Grandma to have visitors in groups of 1 or 2, or we're going to visit each of the family members rather than having a big party. However, again, I want to revisit that party, that pretend party, because if that's important to the caregiver, and that's what the caregiver wants to do, there are ways to still have that happen. And that might be having a family member hang out with Grandma in her room and watch a show, have that door closed and that stimulation kind of removed from her environment.
So maybe Grandma could have some short visits with people who went in there rather than being the hub of all the activity. Great suggestion.
Yeah.
Right. I think too often we see caregivers wanting to just move away from doing these activities that they've always enjoyed doing because they're just overwhelmed to do this, plus they're afraid of the reaction that's going to happen. And when we start brainstorming these ideas of maybe taking different steps and what could we do to maybe reduce the amount of stimulation so that it's not so overwhelming for them. And they start to think of the different solutions and they feel so empowered that they can start to solve these problems. And then they try it and then we hear back. And so often we hear these great stories of how well it worked.
Yeah. Success.
Yeah, exactly. That they were able to implement a solution and get the results they were looking for and still enjoy that moment that they had looked forward to.
Are those some of the things you talk about in those
Absolutely.
powerful tools for caregivers?
Absolutely.
Lots of problem-solving real-life situations and getting the information from other caregivers or getting best practices from other caregivers. So there's one more communication thing I'd like to touch on, and that's for the caregiver to make sure they don't assume that the people around them know how difficult their caregiving experience is, or not to assume that the holidays are going to be a joyful time for them. It's very important to communicate these things, because you might be, as a caregiver, working from dawn till dusk, caring for your person, and thinking, why doesn't anybody see this? Why doesn't anybody see how tired I am? And it is an exhausting and difficult job, which is why it's so important to take care of yourself when you're a caregiver and communicate effectively so you get what you need to continue that very difficult job. But don't assume that your kids, your siblings, any family members know what you're going through. It's important to use those iMessages, share your emotions, share what you need, and then see what action comes from that.
Can't be a martyr in it. You can't assume that nobody's mind reader.
No one's a mind reader.
So
yeah.
just really being open and honest about that in a way that isn't, I think your I statements are exactly right. So it's not like, you don't ever notice this.
Right.
I need this. And that's hard for a lot of us.
It is very
It's especially hard for women to do. I mean, if we're being honest, and women are more often
Majority
than
of the
not
caregiver.
the majority of the caregiving time. So, Kim, let's talk about gift giving. That's kind of part of the holidays for many people, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or something else. What kind of things can help in that area? I think it probably, again, comes to expectations and communications, because whether it's for the caregiver themselves or for the person they're caring for,
Right.
what kind of changes have you seen or recommend?
So if we're looking at the care recipient, there's always, throughout any disease progression, there's different stages. So we have the early stage and the middle stage and late stages. And so what's really important to remember when we're thinking about maybe a possible gift is, where are they in that stage? What could add maybe some quality to their life? And of course, what we're always striving for is comfort. We want that person to experience comfort. So with those things in mind, when we're looking at a possible gift, you could think of someone maybe an early stage of a disease, especially like dementia. They might enjoy an activity book, maybe a crossword puzzle or something to that effect, where someone in late stages, that would be upsetting to them because they wouldn't understand what to do. So being really aware of those types of things. So some other ideas, for people might be like night lights, especially, as people are up and moving at night, it's really important to have good lighted pathways for them. Maybe large button telephones to make it easier for them to make phone calls so they can make those connections with people in the community. Maybe the large clocks, the alarm clocks that have the large, again, just making it easier for them to see. Maybe even people in later stages, a robe or slippers or blankets, things that are going to help to really make them more comfortable. Maybe even if they do have dementia and they wander, one of those bracelets that you can get through the Alzheimer's Association that identifies who they are. If they wander. So a medication dispenser, maybe, if they're forgetting to take their medications. Personal emergency response system, the button.
Absolutely.
I think that one is a really great idea for people at this time of the year to think of that as a gift, because it is a gift that works all year round.
Absolutely.
So that if they do fall or have any difficulties, the help is just a push of a button and they can get the assistance that they need.
And peace of mind
Yeah.
for the caregiver and the other family members who might think,
Absolutely.
okay, good, now in case, somebody gets
Right.
up when my sister's sleeping and mom gets up and wanders, you
Right.
can't be there 24/7. You've got to get some
Right.
rest.
Right.
So.
And for that caregiver, we really want to remember how stressed they usually are in their caregiving role, because even if you don't see the stress, they're good at hiding it. They probably are experiencing some level of stress. So the more you can look at things to help them relax, those,
should always just assume there's stress.
Yeah.
There's a level of stress.
stress.
I don't like to assume a lot of things, but when it comes to caregiving,
Right.
assume that there's stress
Right.
involved. Right.
And then, we talked a little bit about respite care, and that's the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of time. For them to be able to get out, take care of themselves, offer to sit with the person that they're caregiving for so that they can get out and do things, get them some movie tickets maybe so they can just get a break and get away.
Because it doesn't, you could give movie tickets or say, here, go get a pedicure or a manicure, but if you're not giving them a way to do that,
Right.
that gift isn't really truly very helpful,
Exactly.
because they're going to feel such guilt over that.
Right.
That's a great idea. And I would say, again, probably it comes down to some communication. Make sure, before you give chocolate, that's not, they're not on a diabetic diet or something like that, to
Right.
communicate with the person who knows that the best, the caregiver usually.
Absolutely.
So again, as we've said before, the holidays are bringing family members home a lot of times, and sometimes they may come home and They see things that they think need to change. Might be as big of an issue as housing. Mom, we don't think you can stay in your home anymore. Or smaller, like needing to add grab bars in the bathroom or railings going up steps or things. And a lot of times, I think we've all probably seen it, older adults sometimes are resistant. That role reversal of the child now trying to help with some of that is hard sometimes for people to take. Amy, how can I'm guessing it's going to come to communication again, but
It is.
what are some tips on how to address that smoothly?
Sure. Yeah, and it's very difficult when you come home and you see that things have changed dramatically and that your parents or grandparents could really benefit from some additional environmental supports or even having someone come into the house. So delicately is a good way to broach it. Or perhaps your person that you're hoping to get some additional help for really already recognizes that but doesn't know how to bring it up either. So bringing it up. I've noticed that there isn't grab bars in the bathroom, and I've heard that grab bars are vital to avoiding slips. And I'd like to gift you some grab bars for Christmas, or I would like to be able to install those while I'm here. Just kind of gauge that reaction and go from there. People who are in trouble in their living environment often recognize it. It's just kind of getting over the realization and the acceptance of what needs to happen next.
So some people are going to be realizing that they need help, and sometimes, again, they might be a little resistant to it. Or even when help's offered, sometimes it's just really difficult, and it's not, there's pride involved, but sometimes it's a generational thing, again, about offering that. Do you have any advice in that area about things that, again, a loved one could offer? Maybe our classes, we've got a caregiver link newsletter. There's all kinds of resources that we have, plus there's lots more in the community.
Right. If they're agreeable to be in contact with Senior Resources or for their names to be referred to Senior Resources, then we could offer through those options counselors everything that's available and let them take advantage of the things that they would like to learn more about or a class that they would like to participate in. The workshops are often scary workshops. I'm going to go and it's going to be whatever. People who attend have said, I cannot believe I've waited this long. I should have been here 2 or 3 years ago. Because the support you get from other people who are in a similar situation, the great idea sharing between the participants, as well as the tools you learn to continue caregiving, and just being told, you have to take respite, not you should. You should take care of yourself. No, you must take care of yourself, because if something happens to you, then 2 people are without care.
And so I would imagine that friendships have been developed out of these classes, absolutely. And I know that the caregiver support group that we have every Friday afternoon from 1 to 2:30 at Tanglewood Park, that they've got some really nice friendships that have developed there. So I would imagine that all of that can be very helpful. And again, you'll be able to find all of those on our website, www.seniorresourceswmi.org, all kinds of information there. Let's talk real quickly about some other things. When, a lot of times we do have family coming together, but not everybody has family here. And sometimes, or they have family and they might only see them every couple of years. Our messages and the media and everything, and then we hear people talk about what a wonderful time for togetherness that is, but it isn't reality for everybody. Social isolation is a really big issue with a lot of people, and sometimes it's just even more pronounced because they realize what they're missing. And so besides the sadness, it's actually a health hazard. It's the equivalent of, they say it's the equivalent of smoking packs of cigarettes. So what, coming back to some gift ideas, maybe there would be some ideas for some activities, assuming that somebody's able to get out a little bit. It could be memberships to places like Age Well Services, which has all kinds of great things right in our building at Tanglewood Park, or local museums, or the symphony, or a civic theater performance, or high school performance, or anything else. Any other things, Kim, that you can think of, things that maybe don't even cost money to do, that gift of time?
The gift of time, again, I think, is the most important thing that we can remember to give to people. Honestly, when people are lonely, that is the one thing they crave the most is just human contact. So being able to give them time in any way, maybe go for a drive, go down to the lake, maybe help them to write some Christmas cards and send them in the mail. Really anything you can do to spend time with an older person that is lonely is an amazing gift that you're giving them. Something else to look at too, and it isn't without cost, but as technology increases and we're seeing the older population actually embracing technology more and more, through the tablets they can use FaceTime and video calling. So if you have someone that is out of the area, having that connection and being able to talk to them on a regular basis. And there's lots of different applications now that make it very user-friendly for the senior to do that. So that's another thought to look at.
And so another gift about that could be, maybe they've even got a tablet that they've been gifted, but showing them how to use it.
Absolutely.
That's a really great way for a younger relative maybe to be helpful, because boy, don't we all turn to our kids when we need some help with those.
And along those same lines, with social isolation and technology, there are online support groups as well. If you're not able to leave the house every week and be able to attend an in-person support group, there's online support groups too, and we can help connect with those.
Great to know. So we've only got a few minutes left. Any other last words you want to share, Amy or Kim? We'll start with you, Amy.
Well, the holidays are a busy time, and for caregivers, they can be stressful, and there can be periods of grief as you kind of mourn what has been and what is now, recognizing that there's always different seasons in life. Pick a couple things. If it's driving around looking at lights, or if it's always been the Christmas Eve service, pick a couple of things that kind of serve as your goal, or the things that you want to do to fill yourself and nourish yourself during the holiday season. Try to be forthright with your needs, with the people that matter, the people who can support and help you. And look at this as an opportunity to share that time with your family and the person you care for.
Great. Kim, any words from you?
I think the main thing for caregivers to remember is to be kind to themselves. I think too often we're very hard on ourselves. We're our own worst critic. And remember that every day you're doing the best you can do to be the best caregiver you can be, and to forgive yourself if you feel like you are not doing the best job, because you're doing the best you can every single day. So.
Those are both really great pieces of advice. I think that one of the biggest takeaways for me is just it's really difficult for people to accept help, no matter how old, or to ask for help, and sometimes to accept it, but to realize that sometimes it's not a selfish thing to do.
No.
You really are. I mean, it's a tired thing to say. It's like what they tell you if you've been on an airplane about the oxygen mask, but I know you say that in caregiving classes all the time. You do no good to your loved one if you aren't taking care of yourself, because you said it well. If something happens to you, now it's not just you, it's the person that you love and care for. So asking for help, nobody's going to know what you need if you don't ask for it. We always think that it's got to be obvious, but boy, sometimes we're really good actresses at figuring some of that out.
Yes.
So I want to thank both of you for joining me today to talk about this really important subject that's not just important at the holiday time, though. But it's really key, because this is sometimes a time when we've got people who we can communicate with because they're there and they can see it. So again, remember, you can always find more resources on our website, www.seniorresourceswmi.org. You can call us at our main number at 231-739-5858. If you can't remember either one of those, you can always call our friends at call 211. Just dial those three numbers, 211. Tell them what you're looking for. They know us well. They would know how to get you in touch with us. I look forward to talking to you next month. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season, whatever you may celebrate, and we'll see you in January. Thanks for joining us today.